Emerging market investors are paying close attention to Egypt and to the Middle East. What should they do next? We want to bring in Saud Masud. He's CEO of the SM Advisory Group, a consulting firm advising institutional investors on the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, we started today and it seemed like business was starting to get back to normal. The internet was back up, the phones back up in Egypt, and yet now we're watching these clashes on the streets of Cairo. How are you reading this as an investor?
Well, I think this is just one of the phases of this whole process. I mean, the first phase was people are wanting change. Now they're starting to see that maybe they will get change. Now the question is, what is the change going to look like, and how quickly we get there? So now we're in the next phase, which could last for a while. But I think if you look at the markets in the region, the bet is that the outcome is going to be relatively positive. However, I would caution that I don't think this is the right time to be pulling the trigger and necessarily building up positions at this point. Clearly Egypt is trading at a D-rated level at PEs of about 8 times, down from about 12 or 13. And this could go lower. The lowest has been at 6 times. Our
reporter was Lars Satrakian, who's in Cairo, is saying she's been told by CEOs that the stock market will reopen on Tuesday. What happens on Tuesday? I mean, we already saw a crash there.
Look, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more selling pressure because right now I think the risk is still pretty much in the system. Nothing has fundamentally changed from a we don't really know what the new political structure is going to look like. GDP-wise, Egypt is at a standstill. And, the country is losing hundreds of millions of dollars every day. So you could have risk aversion play into when the market opens, like you said, on Tuesday. So I would not be surprised if there's selling pressure. That's why we don't think this is the right time to just jump in just yet.
I was speaking yesterday with a big private equity player who was talking about the Middle East more broadly. It's always been a source for capital, right? But capital has always left the Middle East. Right. You get banks, you get private equity firms flying in there to sort of fill up their buckets, ask for money from sovereign wealth funds, but that hasn't really been reinvested in the region.
Correct.
Do we see that amplified? Where does the money go? Is it going to go to South Asia? Where do we see the flows?
No, I think, first thing first is the money has to stay within the region. I think the flow of hydrocarbon dollars that have accumulated in the region, that needs to be reinvested into a knowledge-based economy across the region. You've got to be able to bring the level of GDP per capita up across the board, reduce unemployment across the board. But in the near term, what you might see is, flows chasing Asia, for example. People realize that it's, again, a hyperinflation story potentially in in an extreme scenario. But U.S. could potentially be benefiting from it in the near term. But long term, I think the money has to stay back in the region and get reinvested.
If it is going to get reinvested in the region, are we seeing, I was speaking to a CEO in the region yesterday who said this generation that you're seeing on the streets is so different from his.
Sure.
They don't know war. They've had peace for 30 years.
Sure.
They've, as we've seen, very savvy with internet access, with telecom. I mean, what's the clear play here? Is it by telecom companies? I mean, is that the most obvious beneficiary from this?
I think it's across the board. It's in the infrastructure segment. I think it's you look at banking. It's an underbanked economy, and literally you can pick anybody from Egypt to Saudi to UAE. The problem, I would just say, with Egypt, if it is a problem, is that unemployment continues to play on the investor psyche. Till you don't solve that, investors are not going to be sure this threat is going to be settled anytime soon.
All right, so thanks for joining us.